Venezuela's silver mines just went dark. They supply 12% of the world's silver, and now they're offline. But that's not why the price exploded. The real story is what happened in the 6 hours before the blackout. 847 tons of silver vanished into the night. And the flight plans of the planes that carried it point to one unbelievable conclusion. This was a secret heist, orchestrated by Russia and China. This wasn't just a theft. It was a coordinated attack on the global financial system, hidden under the cover of a national crisis they helped create. The people who pulled this off knew the blackout was coming because they were the ones who flipped the switch. Let's go back to December 23rd. It was Christmas weekend. The markets were asleep. Traders were on vacation. The news was slow. This is the perfect time to move. It's when they think nobody is watching. But somebody was. We had sources inside the Venezuelan mining sector, and they saw everything. At 11:15 p.m., 3 massive cargo planes appeared at Simón Bolívar International Airport in Caracas. Their official cargo manifest was simple: mining equipment. But this story falls apart the moment you look at the details. The manifest listed the weight at 847 tons. Mining equipment doesn't weigh 847 tons and fit on 3 planes. You don't need armed military guards to escort drills and trucks to the runway. And you definitely don't load it in the dead of night after the airport has officially been closed to all civilian traffic. Let me say that number again: 847 tons. This is the key. They loaded all 847 tons in just 47 minutes. That's nearly 18 tons a minute. It's over 300 kilograms a second. Think about that. You cannot move heavy, awkward mining machinery that fast. It's physically impossible. You can't do it with military precision, with zero paperwork, in near total darkness. But you know what you can move that way? Silver bars, precious metals. You move them exactly like that when you are secretly emptying a country's vaults right before a planned collapse. So what is 847 tons of silver? It's about 27 million troy ounces. In simple terms, that's 15% of all the silver Venezuela produces in an entire year. It's more silver than most nations produce in 2 years. And it was all loaded onto those planes just 6 hours before the mines mysteriously went offline. Here is where the story gets chilling. That number, 847 tons, wasn't random. Our analysis of Venezuela's public records shows that its central bank was supposed to have 850 tons of silver held in its vaults as a strategic reserve. Every country has these reserves. They are physical bars of gold, silver, and platinum. They are the ultimate insurance policy against their own currency collapsing. They are an emergency savings account for a national disaster. After those planes left, only 3 tons remained. 3. They didn't just steal some silver. They stole Venezuela's entire sovereign silver reserve. The timeline of the heist is almost too perfect. At 11:00 p.m., the Venezuelan military suddenly establishes a hard perimeter around the airport's cargo terminals. At 11:15 p.m., the 3 planes begin loading. 11:30 p.m., all civilian air traffic is diverted. They claim it's for unscheduled maintenance. At 12:02 a.m., the first plane is in the air. By 12:28 a.m., all 3 have departed. But they don't all go the same way. 2 head east across the Atlantic, on a flight path towards a Russian naval base. The 3rd turns northeast, towards the Caribbean, on a known route to a Chinese-controlled port. Then the cover-up begins. At 1 a.m., the planes are clear. At 1:15 a.m., Venezuelan state television suddenly goes off the air. At 2 a.m., the power grid failures begin. It starts in the Zulia province, home to the largest mines. By 4 a.m., the entire mining sector is reporting cascading failures. By 5 a.m., the government declares a national mining emergency. The heist is complete. The evidence is buried under a manufactured crisis. But here's what they couldn't hide: the market. Someone knew this was coming. Someone was in a position. As the news of the mining emergency broke, the price of silver didn't just rise, it exploded. It shot up 8%. Not over a day, not over an hour. It happened in 4 minutes. An instantaneous, violent spike that froze trading on multiple exchanges. Markets don't move like that on news. The news is too slow. Markets move like that on information, inside information. This was never just about stealing physical silver. It was about timing the market perfectly. It was about creating a crisis to cash in on the chaos. This was turning a national heist into one of the largest commodity manipulation schemes in history. And the proof is in the trading records. In the 72 hours before the blackout, somebody started making enormous bets that the price of silver was about to skyrocket. The trading volume for these specific bets, called call options, increased by 2,847%. That is not a typo. These weren't small-time investors. The average trade size was over $47 million per position. These were massive institutional players. These were state-level actors with perfect information about what was about to happen. But it gets worse. The bets they were making weren't just simple bets that the price would go up. They were betting on specific numbers. Target prices that someone knew the market would hit after the chaos in Venezuela began. And they were right. The price of silver hit its first target on the day of the blackout. It hit their second target 2 days later. And it peaked at their final highest target exactly 1 week after the Venezuelan mines went dark. This wasn't a lucky guess. This was a pre-planned financial strike. It was trading based on military-grade intelligence. They were cashing in on a crisis they knew was coming because they were the ones who created it. But this leads to a huge problem. 847 tons is a staggering amount of silver. It's too heavy for just 3 cargo planes. So how did they really move it all in the middle of the night without anyone noticing? The answer is terrifying. They didn't use 3 planes. They used 11. The first 3 were just a distraction. They were the planes they wanted us to see. Let's break down the 11 flights that left Venezuela that night, because each one tells a piece of the story. Flights 1, 2, and 3 were the decoys. These were the planes that flew from Caracas to Miami. They carried some silver, just enough to make the official story seem real. This was the sleight of hand. Look here, while the real action happens over there. Flights 4 and 5 were the getaways. They left from a different airport carrying high-level Venezuelan oil executives and their families to Panama City. These were the insiders, the key personnel who helped organize the heist from the ground, getting a golden parachute out of the country before the chaos they helped create was unleashed. Flights 6 and 7 carried the alibi. These jets departed from a private airfield with no air traffic control, and they were filled with actual mining equipment. This equipment was real, and it was valuable. It was payment for certain officials, ensuring their cooperation and silence. Now we get to the real heist. Flights 8 and 9. These were different. They had Russian registrations. They were Antonov AN-124s, some of the largest cargo planes on Earth. The kind of aircraft you use when you need to move something extremely heavy over a very long distance, very, very quietly. But their departure point is what makes this story unbelievable. They took off from Canaima National Park. A national park has no airports, no landing strips, no infrastructure for planes of that size. Except it does. Secret infrastructure. A hidden military airbase built by Russian engineers that doesn't appear on any civilian map. This base connects directly to a network of underground storage vaults. For the last 18 months, Venezuela hasn't been selling all its silver on the open market. A portion of its refined silver was being secretly moved and stockpiled in these hidden vaults, waiting for this exact moment. So, how much silver did the Russians take? Based on the weight capacity of those 2 planes, our sources estimate they were carrying 1,200 tons of refined silver. That's over 38 million ounces. That is more silver than the entire country of Peru, one of the world's top producers, mines in a year. And finally, flights 10 and 11. This is where the story turns into a global geopolitical nightmare. These planes had Chinese registrations. They were operated by a state-owned shipping company that moves strategic materials for the Chinese government. They took off from an undisclosed location and immediately switched off their transponders, disappearing from all civilian radar. These were military planes carrying military cargo under a blanket of military secrecy. We know they landed somewhere in the Caribbean before continuing. The Chinese were not just watching this happen, they were participating. They were coordinating with the Russians. This was a joint operation to extract the maximum amount of a strategic resource before the country collapsed. This is resource warfare, plain and simple. The Russian planes didn't fly directly home. Their flight path reveals the true, chilling scope of this operation. The first stop was Minsk, in Belarus. This wasn't for fuel. Minsk is a known hub for moving things discreetly. This is where the Venezuelan silver was repackaged, its origins erased, ready to be sent to its final destinations. The second stop was Astana, Kazakhstan. This is the heart of a massive silver processing network that feeds directly into the Chinese industry. The silver was refined and prepared for factories in China. The final destination was Moscow, specifically a Russian strategic metal reserve, a hardened underground complex built to survive a nuclear war. There, the silver joined Russia's hoard of gold and platinum, a war chest of physical assets. Russia's involvement in Venezuela isn't new, but this was different. This wasn't about oil contracts. This was about a physical asset grab, executed with military logistics and protected by diplomatic cover. Someone with state-level power emptied Venezuela's vaults. Someone who knew exactly when the lights were going out. This wasn't a natural disaster. It was a controlled demolition. The blackout in Venezuela was timed perfectly to allow for the maximum theft of silver, followed by maximum profit from manipulating the market. But the story isn't about Venezuela. What happened there is just a symptom of a much deeper problem. It's the tip of the iceberg. The real crisis is what this sudden shortage reveals about the entire global silver supply. When 12% of the world's silver disappears overnight, it forces you to look at what's left. And what's left is a system that is already on the verge of total collapse. I'm about to show you the numbers that mining companies pray you never see. The numbers that explain why Venezuela was the first domino to fall. The numbers that prove the current silver market is a mathematical impossibility. Global silver production peaked in 2016. Since then, it has been falling. Not slowly, it's falling fast. Every single year, we are pulling less silver out of the ground than the year before. The peak is behind us. All the easy silver has been mined. What's left is deeper, harder to get, and costs more money and energy to extract. The cost to produce a single ounce of silver is rising exponentially. But demand is doing the opposite. It's exploding, and it's coming from directions nobody ever expected. Industrial demand for silver is skyrocketing. Let me break this down for you, because the real numbers are shocking. Solar panel manufacturing now eats up 22% of all the silver mined in the world. One single industry. And that industry is growing at 35% every year. Just do the math. By 2027, just 3 years from now, solar panels alone will require more silver than the entire world can produce. Let me say that again. One industry is on track to consume the entire global supply. Then there are electric vehicles. A normal car has a tiny amount of silver in it. An electric car uses 10 times more. The EV market is growing at nearly 30% a year. By 2028, cars will use more silver than all the jewelry in the world. Then you have 5G and 6G infrastructure, artificial intelligence data centers. All of them need huge amounts of silver for their high-speed computer parts. The tech sector's appetite for silver is growing faster and faster. On top of that, there's the military, missile guidance systems, radar, satellites, and electronic warfare. As the world gets more dangerous, military demand for silver is becoming a national security issue for every major country. This isn't an optional demand, it's essential. The medical field also needs silver for its antimicrobial and diagnostic equipment. This demand never goes down, so supply is falling. Demand is exploding. The deficit is already real. We now use over 1.1 billion ounces of silver every year, but we only mine about 800 million ounces. That's a 300 million ounce shortfall, and it gets bigger every single year. What happened in Venezuela didn't create this crisis. It just exposed it. It pulled the curtain back. It turned a slow-moving supply problem into an immediate, strategic emergency that threatens the entire modern world. The blackout in Venezuela marks the moment that powerful countries realized that silver scarcity is now a national security threat. It signals the beginning of nations hoarding resources. It is the end of the free market for strategic metals. Because those planes leaving Caracas weren't just flying to random countries. They were carrying stolen silver to nations that have been secretly stockpiling it for years. They are preparing for resource warfare against the US dollar. China's official silver reserves are a state secret, but we can see what they're doing by looking at their import data. This year, China imported nearly 250 million ounces of silver. That is 30% of all the silver mined in the entire world, flowing into one country. But here's the key. China's industries only use about 180 million ounces. So where is the extra 70 million ounces going? It's going into secret government vaults. It's going into strategic stockpiles, hidden in underground bunkers. China isn't just buying silver to build solar panels. China is stockpiling silver for the exact same reason they've been stockpiling gold. They know the dollar-based financial system is on its last legs, and they know that when it finally collapses, the countries holding physical metals will have all the power in the new system that comes next. Russia's silver reserves are also a state secret, but we know that Russia suddenly stopped exporting almost any silver this year, even though its mines are producing the same amount as always. Where is all that metal going? It's not being sold. It's going into the same state vaults, the same hardened underground bunkers, right alongside their gold. Russia understands what the West has forgotten. Silver is real money. It can't be printed from thin air. It can't be sanctioned away. It holds its value when paper currencies collapse. Every ounce of silver Russia adds to its vaults is another weapon in its economic war against the United States. And it's not just Russia. India's silver imports are shattering records. They are buying more silver than Mexico, the world's largest producer, can even mine. India is sucking up the global silver supply through every channel it can find. And this silver isn't going to jewelry makers. It's being secretly funneled to India's central bank through shell companies. India is building a massive strategic silver reserve as part of its plan to break away from the US dollar. This is the new reality. Nations are now treating silver like a strategic weapon, like uranium, like rare earth metals. It's a resource that gives them a military and economic advantage over their rivals. And the heist in Venezuela? That was just the opening shot in a much larger conflict. The Venezuelan crisis just triggered a cascade of events, a sequence that will unfold over the next 18 months as the silver shortage goes from a problem on paper to a full-blown catastrophe. We are watching a six-phase collapse play out in real time. Phase 1. Supply shock. This is where we are right now. The market is just now realizing that 12% of the world's silver supply is gone, indefinitely. Prices have spiked, and those in the know have already started hoarding. Phase 2. Industrial panic. This is next. Companies that need silver to build their products, from Tesla to Apple to solar panel makers, will realize their supply chains are about to break. They will stop ordering just what they need and start building massive stockpiles. They will hoard silver like people hoarded toilet paper in 2020. This will cause demand to explode at the same moment supply is shrinking. The price will begin to accelerate violently. Phase 3. Financial system stress. The big banks have sold trillions of dollars of paper silver that doesn't actually exist. As the physical price skyrockets, they will face demands for silver they can't deliver. The paper market will break. The price of a real, physical silver coin will become completely disconnected from the fake price on your computer screen. Phase 4. Government intervention. Governments will realize that a silver shortage threatens their entire industrial base and their national security. They will start buying up all the silver they can find, using freshly printed money. The free market for silver will be dead. It will be allocated by the state for the state. Phase 5. Currency collapse. As silver becomes a state-controlled asset, its true role as money will resurface. Countries that have stockpiles of real metal will have enormous power. The US dollar's ability to buy real things, like strategic metals, will collapse. Phase 6. Resource war. This is the end game. Countries will use their silver reserves as economic weapons. They will cut off the supply to their enemies. Trade wars will become hot resource wars. The global economy will shatter. The heist in Venezuela just shoved us from Phase 1 into Phase 2 overnight. The rest is now almost inevitable. It's just math. The silver stolen from Venezuela is gone forever. It's in Moscow. It's in Beijing. It is controlled by countries that are actively trying to destroy the dollar system. Every ounce that goes into their vaults is an ounce that will never return to the open market. We are witnessing the end of free markets for crucial commodities. We are watching the dawn of a new age of scarcity warfare. The lights went out in Venezuela, but the real darkness is what this event has shown us about our future. But there's something else happening here. Something that makes this whole operation even more sinister than just stealing a resource. This wasn't just about the silver. It was a test. It was Russia and China probing Western defenses. They wanted to see how we would react. They were timing our response. And what did they learn? They now know exactly how long it takes our intelligence agencies to even notice that a resource war is underway. They know how long it takes our governments to try and coordinate a response. They know how long it takes our media to report on what's really happening. The answer, in all cases, was the same. Too long. By the time our analysts figured out what had happened, the silver was gone, and the thieves were already planning their next target. Russia and China now have a precise blueprint of our weaknesses. They know exactly where we aren't looking. They know exactly how to strike next. The next heist will be faster, it will be cleaner, and it will be bigger. We are in a war we don't even know is being fought. While our leaders are busy arguing about inflation, Russia and China are quietly seizing control of the physical materials our entire economy depends on. But there's another layer here. The Venezuelan heist wasn't just a test of our defenses. It was an act of financial warfare on a scale that is hard to comprehend. We need to follow the money, not just the silver, all of it. In the 72 hours around the blackout, something strange happened in the currency markets. The Russian ruble suddenly jumped 2%. The Chinese yuan gained 1% against the dollar. At the same time, the Venezuelan currency, which should have collapsed during a national crisis, actually stabilized. None of this makes any sense, unless you realize it was all part of the same coordinated operation. Russia and China weren't just stealing silver. They were using the heist to attack the US dollar's status as the world's reserve currency. Here's how it works. When a country like the United States loses access to a critical material like silver, it is forced to buy it from new suppliers. In this case, Russia and China. But Russia and China will not accept US dollars for their silver. The silver stolen from Venezuela will eventually be sold back to the Western companies that need it. Samsung will need it for their phones. Tesla will need it for their cars, but they will be forced to pay in Russian rubles or Chinese yuan. This forces major Western companies to start buying and holding Eastern currencies. This creates real demand for the ruble and the yuan, while simultaneously decreasing demand for the US dollar. They are turning our dependence on raw materials into a weapon against our currency. Control the resources, and you control the money. The Venezuelan operation was the opening shot in a war to dethrone the dollar. And it's working. Every ounce of silver that leaves Western control is an ounce that must be bought back later using their currency. They have turned the silver market into a dollar destruction machine. Every time the silver price spikes, it puts more pressure on Western companies, pushing them further into the arms of Russia and China and further away from the dollar. This is why the operation was so perfectly coordinated between Moscow and Beijing. This isn't just about building up their own stockpiles. It's about creating a whole new financial system, a system that does not need the US dollar at all. In this new system, Russia provides the energy, China provides the factories, and together they control the strategic metals that make all modern technology possible. Any country that wants to participate in their system must use their currency. Any country that stays loyal to the dollar gets cut off from essential supplies. Venezuela was the test case. It was proof that this strategy works. It proved that you can use resource warfare to break the global financial system. If they succeed, the dollar's reign is over, and America's economic dominance dies along with it. But how do they hide the money? Stealing 847 tons of silver is one thing, but how do you make that value disappear from the global financial system? The answer is a money laundering scheme so vast, it's almost brilliant. Here's how they made the Venezuelan silver vanish, not just physically, but financially. Step 1. The Venezuelan government declares an emergency. They announce they can't fulfill any of their existing contracts to deliver silver because of the infrastructure failure. This legally frees them from having to deliver metal they've already sold to legitimate buyers. Step 2. The now stranded silver is sold for pennies on the dollar to a series of anonymous shell companies. These companies are registered in places like Dubai and Cyprus. On paper, they look independent. In reality, they are secretly owned by the Russian state. Step 3. Those shell companies immediately turn around and sell the silver to Chinese state-owned refineries for a massive profit. The profit is then laundered through cryptocurrency and untraceable banking networks. Step 4. The Chinese refineries melt down the silver bars, erasing any marks that could trace them back to Venezuela. The metal is then re-stamped and officially becomes part of China's strategic reserve. The silver and the money have vanished without a trace. The entire operation is the perfect crime. It generates billions in untraceable cash while moving a critical resource from a Western-aligned nation directly into the hands of Russia and China. And it's all completely legal. Because Venezuela declared a national emergency, they can legally sell their silver to whomever they want. The timing was surgically precise. December 23rd was chosen for a reason. It's the last day of trading before the Christmas holiday. Any weird market activity gets lost in the low-volume noise. All the regulators and financial journalists are on vacation. They timed the heist to coincide with the moment of minimum attention. It also lines up perfectly with year-end accounting. Major Western companies like Samsung, Tesla, and Apple were all expecting to receive massive shipments of Venezuelan silver in January to start their 2025 production. By staging the crisis on December 23rd, Venezuela could legally cancel all of those contracts, then sell the silver to its real partners, Russia and China. And here's the most sinister part. Those Western companies don't even know their silver is gone yet. They are still planning for a delivery that will never arrive. On January 2nd, they will wake up to a notice saying their contracts are void. Their supply has vanished. Samsung was counting on 347 tons of silver for its new battery factories. Tesla had contracts for 234 tons. Apple needed 156 tons for their next generation of computer chips. All of that metal is now sitting in Russian and Chinese vaults. These companies will be forced to rush into the open market in January, trying to buy silver that no longer exists. This will be the trigger for Phase 2, industrial panic. The financial damage will be catastrophic. Samsung's entire business plan was based on a certain silver price. If they have to pay double that price on the open market, their production costs explode. Their profits disappear. Tesla will have to choose between redesigning their cars or absorbing massive losses. Apple's new product launches will be delayed for years, costing them billions. This is corporate-level economic warfare. By controlling the supply of a critical metal, Russia and China can now hold the world's largest tech companies hostage. They can delay their products. They can destroy their profits. They can demand tribute. The Venezuelan operation was a test run for a new kind of technological extortion, and our governments are completely powerless to stop it. Because on paper, no crime was committed. Russia and China have discovered the perfect weapon, legal resource warfare, conducted under the cover of a manufactured crisis. This raises a much deeper question. How long have they been planning this? The level of precision suggests this operation has been in the works for years. Our team went back and analyzed Venezuela's silver production data. We found a disturbing pattern that goes all the way back to 2019. Starting that year, Venezuela's official silver exports started to fall, even though its mines were producing the same amount of silver. So where was all that metal going? Instead of selling it to their usual customers in North America and Europe, Venezuela secretly started redirecting its silver to Russian and Chinese refineries. Over the last 5 years, 4,200 tons of silver that should have come west went east. This wasn't a normal business deal. The Russians and Chinese were paying way above the market price. They were deliberately overpaying to secure the physical metal and drain the Western supply chain at the same time. The big heist on December 23rd wasn't the beginning of the theft. It was the end. It was the final, dramatic extraction of the last remaining silver after 5 years of secretly bleeding the country dry. Russia and China didn't just steal 847 tons in one night. They stole over 4,000 tons over 5 years. The final heist was just cleaning out the scraps. This is why the market reaction was so violent. The silver market has been getting secretly tighter for years because of this hidden diversion of metal. When the last of the visible supply finally disappeared overnight, the true mathematical deficit was exposed for everyone to see. We are not heading for a future shortage. The shortage is already here. It's been here for years. It was just hidden from view. Venezuela wasn't just 12% of the world's silver supply. It was 12% of the last bit of available supply after years of secret hoarding by our enemies. Losing that final piece didn't create the problem. It just revealed how big the problem already was. It exposed a scarcity that was already baked into the system. The free market in silver ended years ago. But Russia and China's next target isn't a metal. It's the 12 undersea cables that carry 99% of all global internet traffic. Click here to see their secret plan to cut them.